the mana movement, Otautahi, Leiana Robertson.
Oh, choice, yeah, that's good.
Kia ora.
Kia ora koutou. Ngā mihi nui kia koutou katoa. I'm Leiana Robertson and I'm the chairwoman for Mana Movement Otautahi. And I'd just like to thank you all for hearing us on this 10-year draft plan. Whatever. Our submission is really simple. The most important issue is the 10-year plan is the proposal to give to the council to the power to sell our city assets. Mana has 4 reasons why the council should reject any proposal to sell our assets. I emphasise our assets because they belong to Christchurch citizens, not the mayor and the councillors. 1, the proposal is anti-democratic. There's been no direct council contact with households or citizens to inform them of this radical council proposal and get their informed feedback. This is not a genuine public consultation. Any asset sales will shift economic power from the citizens to big businesses. It will progressively shift Christchurch from being a people city to a corporate city. 2, the proposal is economically dumb. No financial advisor would advise anyone to sell their house in order to pay the mortgage, but this is what the council is proposing. We've seen it all before with Labour assets stripping in the country in the 1980s through privatisations and part privatisations. That was a failure, and yet the council wants us to repeat that failure. 3, the proposal will grow inequality. If Christchurch City Council is to sell assets or part privatise the city assets, then inequality will increase even more in Christchurch. The rich will become richer and the rest of us poorer. We will be welcomed by many of the wealthy, but we will be heavier burden for families already struggling. This disastrous legacy of privatisations from the 1980s is with us today, with a quarter of New Zealand children growing up in poverty. I see it every day. 4, the proposal is unacceptable. There are positive alternatives to seeing assets to meet projected budget shortfalls. For example, renegotiate with the government the funding for capital projects. The government says it doesn't want to renegotiate this is arrangement, but it will always prepare to renegotiate agreements that has with big businesses such as the owners of the Bluff Old aluminium smelter on the price as it pays for electricity. Our mayor needs to take up the fight on behalf of the people of Christchurch because you are elected to represent us, not the interest of the national government and its wealthy backers. Mana urges you all to reject selling our assets. Hea ha te nui o te ao. He tangata, he tangata, he tangata. What is the greatest gift on this earth? And there's people. Kia ora koutou.
Kia ora. Glenn.
Thank you. Could you, I'm going to take it on face value, your assertion about that proposal will grow inequality, because I suspect it would. Could you explain how, though, that happens? With a sell down or a partial sell down of assets, how the kind of equation of that
Yeah, well, I think it inevitably does, because we're in a sort of, if you like, a neoliberal era, and if it was just one particular policy selling one set of assets, it wouldn't have such a dramatic effect. But in the environment we're in, we all know from the past experience of the last 25 years that privatisation is part of a whole set of things which lead to greater inequality. And so if you're selling assets like Orion, for example, their priority then becomes their shareholders rather than their customers. So if it's owned by the city, then the priority tends to be the customers. But if it's owned by privately, the priority will be the shareholders. And one of the submitters before talked about Ngāi Tahu or the government superannuation fund buying those shares, but we're no better off with that, because they are there to make as maximum a return as they can, biggest return they can.
Okay. I saw Orion's work firsthand in the east of Christchurch immediately after the earthquakes. The CEO cycled around from community meeting to community meeting, fronted up to a community hall, laid out a big bit of paper with the network there, and said to the people, he said, if we can't come back to you on Wednesday, because we haven't got, I'll start again. If we haven't got the power on by Wednesday, I'm going to have to come back and look you in the eye and tell you that. Can you please tell us how that might change with a partial?
Well, I think if you look at the privatisation of electricity generally in the late 1990s, and you look at the effect, the dramatic increase in the price of electricity over the last 10 years, far beyond 5 or 6 times the rate of inflation, I'm not sure. And that's because those companies want to get the maximum return. They want to increase their prices as much as they think they can to maximise the return for their shareholders. So the same thing would happen with privatised Orion. They would be looking to gouge the people of Christchurch as much as they possibly can to benefit the shareholders, whoever the shareholders are.
But they're on a regulated price path. They can't charge more than the regulated price path.
Well,
I mean, I think you're confusing it with retail, and Orion is not a retailer.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I think the principle stands, and I'm not. I think we're losing sight of the big picture if we start arguing bits and pieces.
So, Tim.
Thank you. As mentioned earlier, with regards to, rather than selling, but to get past our shortfall, if indeed we can't juggle the books, of leasing some of the assets and having, all the assets have management structure in it already. So if we were to look at leasing with, say, elements of a social responsibility in those contracts, and also when those assets are handed back, say after 30 years or whatever, and there's a quality guarantee element of the quality of the asset being returned, with resilience built in there. And if we were to lease it to, say, ACC or New Zealand super fund or whatever, so which is owned by all New Zealanders, what would your thoughts be on those? So the asset would return, but it's owned by all New Zealanders whilst it's being leased out.
I think you're in the same situation. You remember when they sold Telecom, and we had the Kiwi share, which is what you're talking about, an element of social responsibility built into the contract. And you look at what actually happened with Telecom, where it was sold in 1990, and then over the next 10 years, $12 billion in profit went overseas. And then when they sold that after 12 years, they got $12 billion extra in capital. Well, sorry, about $8 million in capital gain for the owners. So I think the principle stays the same, that the building in that social responsibility actually had no effect for New Zealanders. At the end of that Telecom thing, we had very poor, because it was a monopoly. It was run as a monopoly enterprise.
But it was sold overseas. It wasn't sold ACC in New Zealand. Yeah. So I'm talking about.
Yeah, but ACC. But we would expect ACC. We expect ACC when they're investing money to get the best deal they can, and they're not. They're going to be wanting a proper return from the people from their investment here. Otherwise, they'd invest somewhere else.
Well, that affects the sale or the lease price, doesn't it? Because if we've got a level of social responsibility, i.e. capping price, etc., that will bring down the sale price. But I'm just saying we've got an issue, and I'm just thinking outside the box how to move forward without losing the asset, that's all.
Right. No, I understand what you're saying. I would say that we, in looking at those things, we're taking the focus off the problem, where the problem actually is. And I really want to emphasise what I said before. I think the people of Christchurch will really get behind the council. I mean, the council, national government want to retain the electorate seats they have here in Christchurch. They're desperate to do it. But if there was a movement in Christchurch that really put the pressure on them, they'd back off very quickly.
Well, we've got an idea about how we might do that. So, thank you very much for your submission. Hey? No. No. I'm not. My evil twin is not speaking at this moment. Thank you. So that's all for tonight. We have had some people agree to move to another day, and we've a couple have pulled out. So that's fantastic, and I think that we adjourn today's meeting until 1 o'clock tomorrow afternoon.